Welcome to the Video Insiders Podcast. I'm Carlos Pacheco.
And I'm Tom Martin.
And we are two grizzled, experienced YouTube channel veterans. We are not YouTubers. Well, Tom is a little bit, but
maybe
we are
maybe in a former life.
Yes, but our work over the many years that we've been on YouTube has been behind the scenes, managing YouTube channels, optimizing YouTube channels, building massive media conglomerates, their YouTube channels. And this podcast is about the behind the scenes of YouTube and managing videos and optimizing and making more money from your channel. Tom, how have you been?
I have been really busy.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm getting so busy. I've actually hired, well, I wouldn't say hired, I've got some people helping me that are being paid. So yes, I kind of have hired people. But yeah, I was just being a bottleneck for so many things, and there were so many things that were just sitting there not getting done. And I was probably spending my time on the not the wrong things, but probably not the most important things that needed me. And so now I'm trying to, as much as possible, where tasks don't need it to be me actually doing it, is to hand that over to somebody else and get them to do it. So it's addictive, because now I'm just like, can I hand that off? Can I hand that off? Can I hand that off? Can I hand that off?
Yeah, I think that's a sort of like an entrepreneurial thing, right? That you learn as you grow a business. Like many creators who launch their channels and build their businesses, they have a hard time letting go of the everyday stuff, and you end up learning that. It ends up really growing your business. And I'm not going to say this as if I'm a pro here, because I fall into the same issues as you. Although I have used people in the past, I to this day I still have a hard time letting go and wanting to have my hands on everything and just do everything myself, because the only person I can trust is myself. So, but yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, I'm still holding on to a lot of the kind of client-facing work, but it's kind of the background stuff that doesn't need me. It's mainly like, spreadsheets and Photoshop and video editing and that kind of stuff. But I do think soon it will be time for me to look for someone a bit more skilled who can do some of that client work as well, because one of my aims is to really grow that side of the business next year, and it's already starting to kind of creep up on me that I'm running out of time in the week. So yeah,
awesome.
Space, interesting times. And you, how are you, good sir?
Good. I mean, last time we spoke, I think we sort of announced that I was sort of leaving the city. So it's much more a little bit, personal stuff. Work is still busy, and still, the inbound from various conversations has been fascinating. The different type of companies. I have a unique company that reached out to me this week that I don't want to talk about yet, but it's like they're trying to approach the creator partnership, quote unquote MCN side of things very differently. And I call it an MCN, but it's not. But it's like, and I'm like listening to them, and I'm like, I'm not too sure you know what you're doing, but I'll keep listening. Yeah. It's been really interesting to see that side of the stuff. I don't know how to describe it other than doing this stuff with YouTube channels with all different companies. Every single company is different. Every single company has unique requirements. It's always sort of like a learning curve with everybody. So it's really interesting the inbound and the clients that come my way. Before we get started, we want to thank TubeBuddy, now part of BEN. TubeBuddy is the ultimate tool for creators to streamline their daily workflow on YouTube, allowing for more time to make great content. I use TubeBuddy and recommend TubeBuddy to all my clients. I use TubeBuddy every day. It's the one tool that is my requirement as soon as I start working with a new client, because it really helps me get things done very quickly. From their bulk tools to their SEO tools, it's a must. Tom, do we have an offer?
We absolutely do. You can get a world exclusive multi-channel discount by visiting videoinsiders.fm/TubeBuddy. Thank you, Bill Gates.
Thank you too. Just a little note. Bill Gates founded BEN, which now owns TubeBuddy. That's why the joke is funny.
That is why the joke is funny. If you have to explain it, it's not that funny. But
yeah, I know. So what are we going to talk about this week? We're going to talk about Vid Summit, a new, unique Vid Summit this year, which I think it's the second year since Mr. Beast bought it, right? Or was that last year?
I don't think he bought it. I think he bought into it. So I think he's
bought into it. Yes, you're right.
Partner,
sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I think last year was the first year, and then this year is year 2.
Yes, and I'll be sort of like the sort of the fanboy here because I've never presented or been. I've been at VidSummit, but I've never sort of been a speaker, and you've been a speaker many times. Tom, since you were in the midst of it, and you're good buddies with Daryl. Like, how was it? How do you think? Do you think it's still a must for people like us to go?
Obviously, it's very, very different not being in person, and I think the thing for me for any event is that the in person aspect is probably the most important for any kind of conference. But this year, that's pretty much off the table, no matter what conference you're talking about. So I think we kind of have to leave that to one side for this conversation and talk about the educational aspect. I think the ticket price, if you wanted just the virtual ticket for this year only, so I know there was another ticket option where you could also get like next year's in-person ticket as well. I think the kind of stream ticket only was something like $197, something like that.
Yeah, I saw that.
I think that's exceptional value considering the amount of people talking, the fact that you got access to all the replays. They actually threw in some replays from previous years as well, which is pretty incredible. So, if you ask me from a monetary standpoint, would it be worth it to pay $197 to get access to however, what is it, something like 40 talks? Absolutely. 1,000,000% worth it. Just, I'll put my hands up, and I didn't experience a lot of it live because I just come out of 2-week isolation, and it was the first time that I could leave the house. So most of my weekend was spent outdoors after being cooped in. So my Vid Summit experience was not necessarily a live one, but kind of been drip fed, throughout the week. Because we're recording this a week after it started, and and including a big binge of talks last night as well. So some absolutely fantastic talks. I've still got a long list of ones that I want to get through, and a lot of familiar faces from the kind of speaking circuit, a lot of new ones as well. And at least by the talks that I've watched already, that's absolutely well worth the ticket price, and that includes my own because I'm very vain and I watch back my own talk as well.
So I have to say, like my first experience at VidSummit was actually a virtual one many years ago. I was a virtual client. Even back then, where it was a regular conference, they were offering the virtual ticket, and that sold me on a conference and made me really want to go the year after, which I did. That's one of the things that I find fascinating about, and something that people don't think about when they offer. Many people I know in the conferencing world don't understand how much that the virtual thing might prevent people from actually coming, but it also creates this opening and a showing of what you're missing. And you're absolutely right. Like the experience of being in there and mingling with people and kindred spirits and going out for drinks and all that sort of stuff is really hard to it's hard to describe it. It's like one of the best things about these conferences, but obviously it is what it is this year. So, Tom, I did watch your talk. Let's sell it. Let's tell people what was your big presentation about.
Yeah, so for once, I had the pleasure of not speaking about anything to do with YouTube SEO or optimizing titles or tags or descriptions or anything like that. Nothing about the algorithm. I don't think I mentioned the algorithm once, and that was an absolute refreshing experience. So what I spoke about is how to increase your monetization on YouTube, and that is not that was not about having Patreon or having merch or having a membership site or selling tickets to events. This was all about how do you take your existing assets. So let's say you've uploaded 500 assets in the past year or so. How do you take those as they are and make more money from them without doing a whole lot of extra work and without uploading another 500 videos? So just how can you take what you've already published and tweak some things and implement some new strategies to make at least 5 times more revenue than you're currently making from those current from if you were just only making kind of AdSense money on that. And a big chunk of that talk, maybe half of it or a third of it, was based around how to optimize your ad settings on YouTube. So ad placements, types of ads that you allow, talking about copyright claims and is it or is it not marked for kids, and are you using kind of controversial keywords that might get you flagged for demonetization, stuff like that. So very, very actionable, as I always like to pride myself on in my talks. And, some of those tips you could go away that night, implement some of that stuff and wake up the next morning and improved your revenue rate on a daily basis. So got a lot of good feedback about that talk. I had a lot of good comments. And actually that my talk was actually not part of the main Vid Summit. It was actually part of the hype stream, the kind of the night before it started. And it was available for free on YouTube.
Oh,
a YouTube Live. Yeah. So if you go and check that out, I think it's it's still available. So you can actually go and watch that. We'll link to it in the show notes. You can still watch that talk, or at least you could yesterday. And I got an absolutely glowing introduction from Daryl. He was absolutely amazingly complimentary about me before the talk, and he said that he actually handpicked that talk to show people just how amazing Vid Summit was. And then I jumped on the live stream a few hours later with some really horrible internet connection for some reason, and just chatted to Daryl for about 15 minutes live on that stream. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome. I would assume you live streamed from home?
Yes. Well, my internet was really, really good, so it was some kind of gremlin in the system somewhere. But yeah, that's available over on the Vid Summit YouTube channel.
Cool. We'll make sure to link it in the show notes. What I found really fascinating this year is that just like it's almost it's very YouTube in a way, whereas there's always a bunch of like a big chunk of newcomers, right?
Wait. Before we move on.
All right.
I've got to put you on the spot. What did you think of my talk, Carlos? Are you trying to be polite and not talk about it because it was that bad, or what was your?
No, I thought no.
What was your thoughts on it as someone who's watched it?
No, I thought you were absolutely on point. These are all opportunities that actionable opportunities, and that's actually thanks for putting me on the spot there. But one of the things that I hate, and this is me personally, I do not like the whole like rah, you need to be creative or blah, blah, sort of the big fuzzy stuff in presentation, right? Be authentic, stuff like that. It's like, that's not actionable stuff, right? I'm very much into the actionable stuff, and I get that compliment as well whenever I do presentations and all that sort of stuff. So definitely appreciate that from your presentations, and I think they were great. I think that the fact that content ID is still something that people don't pay attention to and don't know about, and it's still a wild west. I mean, we talk specifically about YouTube, but there's Facebook's dabbling into it. All the other platforms are going to have to reckon with it sooner or later. They're not playing in the Wild West. They're still playing Wild West. Actually, something on a just side note, like I don't know if you're paying attention to the craziness around Twitch these days, but all the music takedowns that are happening on Twitch, it's like the reckoning, right?
Yeah. Well, and it made me think instantly about what you always say is, grow a platform with kind of the wild, wild west approach. And then by the time you get regulated or the music industry get wind of you, then it's kind of like, all right, well, we're big enough now that we can strike a deal with a record label, so it doesn't matter.
It's not that. Is actually the way I've heard it from the other side, is that as soon as the record labels see that you're scaling up and there's money, they're knocking at the door. And just I don't want to sort of dwell too much on this, because this can be like a full-on podcast, and I got something in the works to talk about this. But essentially, Twitch has been like, I'm putting Twitch under the bus. I mean, 6 years Amazon bought this company, and 6 years they've just twiddled their thumbs. And I know for a fact that they knew this was going to happen, and they still did nothing, because they thought, oh, we're Amazon, right? So anyways, that's a sideline of that stuff. Yeah. So,
interesting.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the distribution, the content ID, these are all things that really people, content creators, and also the language thing, right? The regional sort of distribution is all things that content creators don't understand or don't pay attention to, and they work, they focus on getting their videos seen, but there's such an underbelly of content monetization, and your tactics were basically on point. So good job.
Thank you.
Again, sort of what I was saying before I was put on a spot is, I remember going to VidCon for a couple years, and it's like, or any other YouTube conference, and the year after I'd be like, who the hell are these people? I can't say it's as intense with VidSummit, because there's some certain people that are just staples in the industry, and they're all there. But I did feel like there was a lot of fresh faces. And before we get into that, we'll talk about that in the next sort of part. But was there anything that you felt is new perspectives? Right, because we're used to sort of the standard things, and then the new, the optimization and maybe we're too deep into it, we're too used to it. But is there anything out there that somebody's saying, or that everybody's sort of saying, that feels new or different this year?
Well, I will caveat that with two things. One is I still haven't watched all of the ones that I want to watch. And two, the ones that I've watched so far have all had nothing to do with quote unquote like YouTube strategy, pretty much. So I haven't watched anything that's mentioned the algorithm, or capturing the audience, or anything like that. Apart from one maybe, which I'll talk about in a bit. But I've been watching everything that's more interesting to me. So things like fair use law, and advertising disclosures, and affiliate marketing. So all the kind of stuff that's around YouTube, but not necessarily like, here's how to get more views. I watched one that was really good from my good friend Luke. He was talking about how to kind of trend jack, which is something that I used to teach and preach a lot, and I've got millions of views from, but I've really gone away from that, or haven't had the opportunity to exploit it. So it was really good to be reminded of that. And he also had some really good kind of new things that I wasn't thinking about. So check that out. That's my good friend Luke Sharon. What was really interesting for me is I went back and also watched Mr. Beast's talk from last year. And it was really, really interesting to me. So he shared his thumbnail process and a lot of stuff like that. And that's interesting. But what was great about that talk was two things. One was he basically just said, it's really, really basic. Make content that people want to watch, and make it so that people can click on it, right? I would add a third thing onto that, and it's, optimize it so it gets in front of people in the first place. But that's another discussion. But he just broke it down to such basics, and he's like, these are the kind of 3 or 4 things that are really, really important. And the one that really stuck out to me was nothing kind of YouTube specific, but he was like, I had 2 friends, and we'd call each other every day, and we'd talk about what we did that day on YouTube, and we'd swap experiments, and we'd get feedback on our thumbnails and our YouTube titles, and we called each other every day for like 3 years. And like, I remember now doing that at the BBC every day with my 2, fellow channel managers, and we'd say, what do you think about this title? Do you think I should do that to the thumbnail? And I really have not valued that kind of feedback and that kind of masterminding, as you might want to call it. And yeah, iron sharpens iron, and when you've got people around you that are smart and know what they're doing, and they're kind of pushing you and questioning what you're doing, and you're doing that back to them, I think that's just such an important thing. And that was a really valuable insight. But generally, it just made me think, like, Tom, just get back to basics. Like, what works. You can try and do a lot of fancy stuff, but the recipe for success on YouTube is pretty simple, really. But I did like to be reminded a lot of that stuff, and I think that's a lot of great conferences remind you of what you already knew, but because you have invested the time to sit down and finally take some time to think about your YouTube channels or your business in a certain way, you're in the right headspace to think, oh yeah, of course I should be doing that. Of course I should be doing that. So I wouldn't say there was anything that was like, whoa, my mind's just been blown. But I definitely think I had a few like head exploded. Of course I need to be doing that. Of course I should be doing that. Of course I should be revisiting that. Yeah, and I really loved that, what he was saying about kind of surrounding yourself with other people. So I'm going to try and implement a bit more of that on some of the stuff that I'm doing. Of course, that is also what I'm trying to build over at Pro Channel Manager, and I think we do have a little bit of an aspect of that, but maybe I need to dial that aspect of it up a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, what the hell, man? It's like, who am I? Like, I'm not somebody you throw ideas to.
No, yeah, but I think you are much more. We constantly throw ideas at each other. But we're more like, what's going on in the industry, or
No, I know,
business wise, talking about clients. But I'm talking about, like, what do you think of this title? What do you think of this thumbnail? Or should I make this cut here or that cut there? And to be a bit fair on myself, on the movie channel, it's pretty straightforward. I'm publishing a movie. It is what it is. It's got its own title. It's got its own images. But I definitely think on some new channels that I'm looking to launch early next year, I could be implementing a lot of good stuff that I've maybe slept on a bit. So what I've seen so far has been really, really useful, but also looking to dive into a lot more as well.
Okay, obviously we've been doing this on our own and building on our own little businesses. So one of the things that you quickly realize when you build a business is that it's a very, very lonely job, right? It's like you're in your little world, and it's easy to get sort of like in your bubble and not think beyond it. And our other jobs when we were working at bigger companies is that you were lucky enough and you had a team, and you can sort of like riff off each other. And I think that's a little bit of what Mr. Beast also sort of like uses as friends. It's people in his ecosystem that do the same thing every day in and day out, and all that sort of stuff. So it totally makes sense. A follow-up, and you sort of addressed it a little bit on the previous point, is by mentioning Luke Sharon. Is anybody out there that's sort of like catching your attention more than others? I'll just say me, anecdotally, I do pay attention to what Daniel Batal, I hope I'm not massacring his name, but I tend to do that just because he's such a character, and he looks like I wanted to look like when I was 16. And so he's, just to describe to everybody, if you don't know him, he's got very long hair and sort of the goatee, and just looks like somebody
like a heavy metal rocker kind of.
He looks like he's part of Tool. He's in the band Tool.
It's funny because I've heard a lot of people say that you look like a Tool, Carlos.
Oh man! Wow, what did I deserve one for?
Couldn't resist.
I'll fully admit you're much more, I would say, outgoing in the community than I am. So, is there anybody in this ecosystem, or especially Vid Summit? I was going to say Vid Summit this year, that you're sort of like, oh, they're cool. They're sort of like, they're just, I don't want to just say they're cool. They're saying stuff, very smart things, and are somebody that we should pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the amazing thing about this Vid Summit, which has been different from all the others, is that obviously it's based in LA, it's organized from LA, and so there's obviously a very heavy bias towards US speakers, where on this time around, because it was VidSummit worldwide and it wasn't all filmed in LA, there were kind of little pods that were organized around the world. So for example, I was organizing the speakers. You may not even know this, Carlos. I was organizing the speakers for the London pod. So I brought everyone together. And because of that, it meant that people that may not necessarily be on the radar of the organizers, or just because they're based in the UK, like I say, just because they're not in, the kind of usual circles, they may not have got a chance to speak. And obviously there are tons of people out there that have got very interesting stuff to say. So I think I've got a bias, of course, to kind of UK voices, but I think I pulled together a really great group of up and coming speakers. So Luke, who I already mentioned, Rupa, whose talk I watched yesterday around kind of advertising standards, like in the FTC guidelines and stuff like that. You absolutely, it's just one of them talks that may not sound glamorous as get 10 million views, but it's the kind of thing that's probably going to save you getting a lawsuit. So you should definitely watch that from Rupa. My good friend Louise Brogan, she's based over in Ireland. She did a great talk on LinkedIn video, although unfortunately they forgot to edit in her slides. So hopefully they will upload a new version to the replay soon. Margarita, she was speaking from a cool company called Paper Cup that do kind of foreign language versions. Yeah, and it's just really cool to see, different voices from around the world. Quite a few female speakers. I know a lot of the speakers that I brought on were females, which is great to see. More of an equal spread in the kind of video scene that is typically dominated by white middle-aged guys like me. So lots of people kind of talking about new subjects as well, not just new faces and new voices, but also talking about new subjects, different platforms. And one talk that really stood out for me was one by a guy called Ian Corzine, and he was talking about fair use and censorship and lawsuits, and kind of he's a social media lawyer. He works with a lot of creators and influencers, and that was really, really interesting. And that's another one where it may not sound so glamorous, but it may save you a date in court, or it may save you your business being taken away from you or something. So, and he's not someone that I'd heard of until this conference, but I'm glad that I've found him, and I'll definitely follow more of his stuff in the future.
Great. Yeah. And I think one of the benefits as well of VidSummit is just to open up that roster of people that, speak your language and are also paying attention to newer things that maybe you're, too busy on your bread and butter business to pay attention to. I did notice quite a few talks about LinkedIn video this year. I did notice not too much of a focus on TikTok, though.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was very, very surprised, because even one of the speakers, Owen Video, who's a good friend of mine, he's absolutely smashing it on TikTok at the moment. But he didn't actually talk about, or at least the title of his video was not based around TikTok. So maybe I think people are using this year to really work out the kinks in their strategies and build fuller case studies. But I think next year will be, I reckon we'll see 3, 4, 5, even more talks around TikTok for sure.
I think we're just too old for TikTok.
Yeah, I definitely am for sure.
What I would recommend anybody listening to this podcast who's curious about this is to really is to download the VidSummit app and sign up, because there's not just the videos from this year, there's the videos from the previous years. There are some high profile talks this year, and there are also high profiles talk in the previous years, names like Casey Neistat and Gary Vee, sort of to name a few. It's definitely worthwhile to get access to that app. We had a podcast way back talking about is VidCon worth it? And I don't think it's even a question in terms of VidSummit for us, for what we do. It's completely worth it. But this year is sort of the year of everything. VidSummit went full virtual this year. In general, do you think on in-person VidSummit is, I know they're planning it for next year, but let's be honest, we planned a lot of things in the last year that didn't come to pass. And I hope it does. Trust me, I hope it does. What's the future of VidSummit? Do you think it'll focus? And you know what, I'll sort of take a little bit of what I just said back, and this is a free-flowing podcast, so I'll make mistakes more often than you, Tom, but
I wouldn't say that.
But I sort of want to scale back the question. The question is more like, what's the future of Vid Summit? Is it going to be like, Vid Summit started because of YouTube, and YouTube feels sort of I don't want to say like it feels done, but it feels like there's nothing new coming from it. There's nothing new learning coming from it, and it feels like
I know what you're saying. You're kind of saying has YouTube been solved?
Yeah, in a way, right? It's sort of, has YouTube been solved? And I feel like VidSummit has done a good job of branching out beyond YouTube, and I think that's, to me, from what I see, is it'll be a continuation of that, right? Is new platforms. The platforms that are killing it these days are all video based, right? I mean, yes, there are some out there. There's a few niche platforms that are audio based, and a few, I don't know if the last time we heard of a text app that's, gone viral. But nowadays, if you want to grow a platform, it has to be UGC video. So my 2 cents when it comes to VidSummit is continuing to branch out, and sort of like the new ways of using video across the internet in general are going to be the main focus for all things VidSummit. Tom?
Yeah, I think there'll still be a core of that YouTube education.
Oh, yes, of course.
Every year there's obviously there's changes, and the algorithm will continue to fine tune itself, but generally it is what it is. But there's a new generation of creators every year. Obviously people return, but then there's new people coming into the ecosystem every year. And so a lot of that stuff which we have heard for the last few years will be brand new to them. So I think that will continue. I think, like you say, new platforms, TikTok will be huge next year. But I think talks like mine will be much more prevalent. So for all those creators that have been to VidSummit for 3, 4, 5 years, and now they've, like we say, they've solved their YouTube channel, they're doing a great job. Okay, so how now do I grow a massive email list? How do I turn that into a membership site? How do I get bigger brand deals? How do I get on Netflix? How do I get my stuff up on Chinese platforms? And I think it's all going to be about next level, because yes, there's always going to be a beginner market, but I think VidSummit particularly prides itself on not being there necessarily for the beginner. And I think so then it will have to be like, what's the new set of problems that creators have now that they've made it, quote unquote? How do you run a better business rather than how do you run a better YouTube channel?
YouTube's not going to go away. It's going to be mature, and there's always new people coming in, and there'll always be the need to sort of educate them. And again, I work with companies that have massive YouTube channels, and they're constantly cycling through channel managers, and their main focus is content creation, and often channel manager, like the writing and of the videos, but the channel manager side of things sometimes isn't as robust as it should be. It's almost like here's the channel, figure things out, and sometimes, obviously it's not the case. It's much more sophisticated. So there's always going to be people, wanting to learn for that. Well, thanks for, basically filling us all in on the whole Vid Summit experience. Again, I was sort of paying attention to it, and it was one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm going to get caught up on it once it's all done, because I have a hard time with like stopping, I'm so used to sort of catch up TV that, live stuff is sort of like, I can't focus on that. So it's definitely great that Vid Summit, it's kind of fascinating to see how, obviously it makes sense considering Daryl's a very smart guy, is that, they built this sort of catch up app for many years, actually, probably one of the best sort of like maintained ones. I've worked for companies that manage conferences and make conferences, and none of the ones that I've worked with are like so afraid of showing the content and so afraid to build anything to get the people to watch the old content or they just don't think about it. It's fascinating in 2020 now they have to. 2020 has forced them, but up until 2020, like they were just like, nope, we don't have any plans for that. You need to be in person. We make the money from the tickets people in person. So all that sort of stuff. So anyways, this sort of a side note.
Well, let's first of all, let's say, I hope I get to see you at a conference in real life soon, Carlos.
That's true.
Because, it's been years since we last saw each other. And just generally, obviously we hope the world recovers and events like VidCon and Vid Summit can go ahead in person, because there is definitely an X factor to that.
Yes,
that in-person element. Yep. So yeah.
So that'll definitely hope. There's not a lot of conferences that I'm as, again, sort of a personal anecdote. Like you're in the industry, you end up going to a lot of conferences over the years, and there's certain ones that I don't have any FOMO for. But Vid Summit's one of those that I still have, interest in participating, and because I guess it's when you have like-minded people in there and that you can catch up on. And again, it's personal anecdotes. Like for me, as not being a creator, like VidCon for me, it was sort of like, okay, I can't, I'm not really having, it's fewer and far between. The first few years you're great, but then after a few years, it's sort of like, okay, I've already aged out of this group, so I need to get out. So obviously, check out VidSummit, vidsummit.com if you want to sign up for the catch-up app, as well as look at what's happening next year. Big thank you to Daryl Eves, again, even though I'm not involved at all, but he's definitely supported you a lot over the years.
Yeah.
He's the OG in this space.
Absolutely.
Right? Big thank you to our founding sponsor, TubeBuddy, for supporting us since the beginning. And we're looking forward to the future with TubeBuddy and their new partnership. TubeBuddy is the ultimate tool to manage your YouTube channels. As I said when we started the podcast, it is the tool I use for all my clients, that I recommend for all my clients. It is a Chrome plugin that you put in, and I say Chrome, but a browser plugin to superpower your YouTube channel, your YouTube optimization, from thumbnails to tags to mass copying across your YouTube channel. It is the ultimate tool for YouTube optimization. Tom, we have an offer?
We do indeed. You can get an exclusive multi-channel discount by visiting videoinsiders.fm/TubeBuddy. Thank you again, TubeBuddy.
If you're enjoying this podcast and know others in this ecosystem that would really enjoy listening to us, please share it with them. If you're using the Apple Podcast, we would really appreciate a review, because that's the only place that counts when it comes to reviews. Tom, have yourself a great couple of weeks.
And you too, stay safe, stay strong. Good luck with the move if I don't speak to you before then.
Oh yeah, I'm going to hope we speak at least once before then. But yes, it's coming quick. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.